called who was going to be here, didn't I?
Yeah, I would be surprised if that changes. Yeah, here's the thing.
Okay, we are on air, and it is 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started with the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for August 25th, 2022. Appreciate you all being here, and we've had a request from staff to move the transit report to the first item, and if there's no objection to that from anybody, we'll go ahead and do that. I actually would prefer that item be the first one every month if we could do that. I think that's appropriate to get that one, just since that's always on the agenda every month. So yeah, we have Taylor here from our staff, and please take the.
Happy to give an update. You have in your packet our monthly report and the monthly performance report, and I'll point out a couple highlights and then transition to the second item, which is this Embark market survey, which I think is really neat and shows a lot of good things that are happening in Norman, and I'd like to devote a lot of the time that we have, at least for the transit stuff, to that. And I know you got a lot of stuff on your agenda, but going through the report for the redesign of the transit center at 320 East Comanche, we have gone through design development and submitted those plans to a cost estimator, so now we're going to really see if we can make the improvements that we'd like to see within the budget that we have remaining for that facility. And what we talked about, bathroom for patrons, obviously bathroom for operators, water filling station, indoor waiting area, so if it's hot or cold, we have that refuge. Outside covered area too, for similar to what we have at Brook Street, but we'll also have the inside. So a lot of things we're trying to address what we've talked about for a long time that are inadequate at the current facility. So
Yeah,
we hope to
looking forward to updates on that as it comes.
kind of going down to the last bullet under the Go Norman Transit Plan. We'll probably bring a item to council about a proposed public participation process to go out for the route changes. So as we've been talking about, there's a fundamental route change that we're working on for the entire system. And we want to just come to you guys and let you know when those dates are that we're going to have meetings and what we're going to talk about in a broad sense. And that way it's all documented and you guys are aware. So we'll probably come to you in the next couple of council meetings with that. Going to grants, we had 3 outstanding grant applications we were waiting for news on. Unfortunately, 2 of them we were not awarded, but one of them we did get funds for replacing 2 CNG buses through the FTA Low or No Emissions Vehicle program. So we'll be working on bringing the grant acceptance to council again in the next couple of council meetings, and then hopefully an authorization to purchase similar to what you saw on Tuesday that you approved. These are in addition to those 3. So hopefully in the next 12 or 15 months, we'll be able to replace 5 of our city's fleet of transit buses with new CNG buses. So that's very exciting.
And that would leave us with, how many do you, off the top of your head, maybe, that we would still need to replace, though? That are
Yeah, our fixed route fleet has 13 vehicles in it, and I should know this off the top of my head, but I think we'll have we'll probably have about 6 left that are past their useful life, but we'll be in a much better shape.
Yeah.
With the 2 electric buses that we should be receiving in the next couple months, we're getting rid of the 2 2003 vehicles we still have on hand. The 3 that we're going to replace that you all approved on Tuesday, we're going to replace some 2007 buses, and these 2 would also replace 2007 or 2009 buses. So we're making a lot of progress on the fixed route fleet. And if you remember, an item was approved a couple of months ago for us replacing 5 paratransit vehicles. So those are also on order and expected to be here later this year. So I think we're about to make a lot of big gains in the next year or so. Probably have about 10 vehicles that we have replaced in the fleet of 28.
And what would the grants that we didn't get, what would that have covered?
So one grant was for the very competitive RAISE grant program, and we asked to install 2 pantograph chargers at the proposed new transit center. So the battery electric buses would be charged while in service and prolong their usage throughout the day. Those were not approved. We obviously still can use the battery electric buses. We just we'll have to see what their range is and how they can operate in the system. Where these would have allowed them to charge continually throughout the day.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd maybe be interested in that budget item, and what it would cost to do that, if staff felt it would be a worthy thing to pursue.
We estimated, I think, 1.2 million, because these are pretty big, pricey machineries that pump a lot of juice into these vehicles. But we'll keep researching. There's the overhead charging. There's new technologies that you put a 4x4 square inductive charger into the pavement or the asphalt underneath the bus, and you can charge that way as well, which may be a little less expensive, but
Like putting your phone on the pad.
yeah. So we'll keep
While it's
researching those.
parked, of course, I guess.
Yeah.
Councilmember Schuler?
I remember when we were purchasing those 2 electric buses, and you came back with an item that would allow for us to be able to charge them like that, right? So we do have the capability.
We do have the capabilities on
Okay,
it.
so we like program that into
Yep.
what we're getting.
Yep.
Okay, just trying to remember back.
And then the other grant that we didn't get was similar to the 2 CNG buses. We basically submitted the 2 CNG buses to 2 separate FTA programs, one specifically for low or no emissions, one's not. So an FTA encouraged that, so you get the grant through either program essentially. So we got that, but we also asked for 4 paratransit vehicles through the not no low program, and we didn't get those funds. But overall, a really good showing for us, I think, as a small transit agency. And then for the entire state, if you're able to look up the RAISE grant and the FTA grants, the entire state met out pretty good in terms of funding for that. So.
Okay.
Just really quickly, the last thing I want to highlight on my report is the RTA update. As you know, some of the member cities have withdrawn, so we received proposed trust indenture changes yesterday, and we'll be bringing a council item to you all to review and ask for your approval of those trust indenture changes. Includes obviously there's less cities, so we have to change the weighted vote system and then the board representation too. So you'll see that coming, but just want to give you a heads up.
I would encourage anybody interested in that topic to go on the City of Norman YouTube channel and watch our CPTC meeting from June, when we had our representative, Marion Hutchinson from the RTA board here, and he gave us a pretty extensive update on what was going on from his perspective and the changes we can expect, and that we're still moving forward, and as far as Norman, Oklahoma City, and Edmond go. So looking forward to seeing that come back as well. Any other questions from committee members?
Just the last thing, the ridership for July, which is the first month of the fiscal year, was just under 21,000, which was about 500 riders more than last July. The average daily passenger, because that's really a better metric, because service days can change from month to month, especially given the weekends and different things. We had an increase of average daily riders from 776 last July to 828. So going up. Summer months tend to be a little bit lower due to school being out. So I'm really interested to see what August and September and October look like. And you can see those ridership average dailies in the chart on the next page, just how that ebb and flow with the school year kind of goes in and out. But other than that, I'm happy to take any questions and then move into the.
I do see that the total ridership is up almost 7% in July compared to last year, and the
Right.
fixed route was up 6.3%, and then the plus ridership was up 13.1%.
Right.
So encouraging to see. I mean, 20,000 plus passengers and almost 1,000 a day. That's 1,000 car trips that aren't having to be taken a day, all throughout the city traffic. So just encourage people to think about that when you are stuck in traffic lights or whatever in Norman.
Is an
There could be 1,000 more car trips out there you'd be running into if it wasn't for this system.
Right.
So.
And we're starting to see us comparing somewhat normal ridership from last year to normal ridership this year with the COVID restrictions being lifted. So we won't see as big of gains, but I hope to see continually steady increases.
Councilmember Schuler?
Yeah, so, but I'm looking at the added mobility on the fixed route. That is the
The
only one
80
that seems to be really.
I was talking to
Down, like, do
Dr.
we
Dillon
understand?
before this, and I think that's a miscount. So we're
Okay.
going to research that. I apologize. I didn't catch that before we
Yeah, I mean,
submitted
it
the
just seems
report.
like a 37.4% decrease.
Yeah. Marilyn, do you want to say anything about that? Just, it could be a,
There is a machine on the bus that when they load a wheelchair, they will push a button. So if we happen to have a defective button that no one had noticed was defective, and it happened to be on the route where a lot of people with mobility devices are traveling, the only way now that we've seen the numbers, now we're gonna go find the buttons.
Okay, so you're gonna investigate.
Last time this happened.
Real high tech.
That's what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Button that wasn't catching the push.
Perfect. Yeah, I was just wondering if, that would be a concern if it was, that was legit. I'd be concerned that we had that much drop off and why was that? But,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I would add to just a couple questions received from the public about the buses and stuff is paper copies of the routes on the buses or a map of the route on the bus. I guess.
We've had this complaint before, and I believe we've addressed it where all the routes are supposed to have their booklet on there with all the routes on them. So we'll double back with Embark and ensure we don't need to get more copies or something, but
Is
it should
it
be on the
typical
buses.
that like the panel behind the bus driver usually, I've seen on other systems
Right.
where there's like
Yeah, they should be
that
there.
route and like a big map that people can look at, has the times on it and stuff.
Not necessarily the big map will be posted, but we should have the physical copies that are in the holders behind the driver.
Is doing the bigger map something we could look into? Maybe
We
we could
can.
save on having to have copies and refill it and being out or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, we can look into that.
If there's space or somewhere where we could do that, that'd be something to look into. And then the bus stops themselves, will the new ones have all the times or the times of the stops written on them? Like the old ones did, I guess.
We're not.
I noticed the
plan-
new ones are kind of higher up and I don't know if, I can't.
We're not
recall.
planning on doing that. That was one of those fundamental shifts to. It was very cumbersome to have to replace those signs or update them when we were at CART because if you ever had to adjust time points or anything, you had to go out and either buy new signs or go out with decals and get the intern like I was and go out on a Saturday morning and just blanket all the stops. So something we're relying on those paper schedules. We're relying on online information because it'd be very costly to update all those signs, and we experienced that at OU. So
I see.
And it's mobile device friendly.
yes, so we also have we should be pretty close to having our app published for people to see where the bus is and to be able to click on bus stops and see what the arrival time is. But
Would it be a thing, yeah, at the bus stops, would it be a thing like on the sign, there's a QR code or something they scan, or how do they look it up?
Well, we'd have the information in the paper schedules or online. That's again one of those things where we could look into it. We just don't want to make the signs too
Sure. But if they're,
specific
yeah,
where we have to change over very often.
they're at the bus stop and waiting, and they're looking at the bus stop sign, what do they know, if they don't know anything about it, or what are they looking up on?
They're looking at the website on the sign, and I can't believe, is there a
That
phone
says
number
that
too,
on the sign,
Marilyn?
though.
I think it's just the,
There's the ones I've seen.
yeah, the phone number and the website, so.
Okay. And they could call that number if they needed to and could, okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll continue to get
And the
some
buses
updates
have
on that.
the call center number on the side
Okay.
of them as well, so.
Okay, any other comments or questions, committee members? Okay, we can move on to item number 2. Oh, lost my place there, okay. The presentation of the Embark 2021 customer survey results.
Chris, can you still hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris with ETC. He was the project manager for the Embark survey and I think has been presenting the results for them for a few years now. So we actually have results from year over year, I believe, this year, last year being the first one that Embark included us in on. They do it annually. So I'll just turn it over to Chris and take it away.
Great. It's good to be with you. For those of you who aren't familiar with our company, ETC Institute, we actually work with city and county governments all over the world. In fact, we've been doing surveys for the city of Norman, dating back to almost 2001, I think was the first one. We've done work with the city of Oklahoma City and dozens of governments in Oklahoma for many, many years. This map is just our GWiz map. You can see in here we've actually conducted transit research for 27 of the 35 largest public transit systems in the United States. We just finished DART down in Dallas and LA Metro's customer satisfaction surveys a few weeks ago. So you're going to see some comparisons, and the nice thing up front is Norman compares extremely well to other transit systems. Today I'm just going to walk you through briefly some of the things that we found. Just so you're comfortable, you're going to be the ones using the data for decision making. So I'll give you a little bit about how it was done, walk you through the findings, and then at the end, if there's any questions, be happy to answer them. As far as the survey itself, it's actually developed to make sure that we get statistically valid data from your writers. One of the toughest challenges during COVID was just knowing who was writing it, who came back, who's going to keep writing it, what do you need to do to improve the overall quality of service for riders. And so we have a lot of questions in there to look at satisfaction. We ask questions about the opportunities to improve the system. And then there's some other questions just to better understand the needs of riders for different topics. So this year's survey was actually done last fall. We usually do it in the fall. We then present the results in the summer. Our goal is to get a statistically valid sample. In this case, we collected 153 surveys on routes in Norman. We had another 1,400 and some that were collected in Oklahoma City. Overall results for Embark have an accuracy of about plus or minus 2.5% at the 95% level of confidence. That just means if we did the entire survey 100 times, 95 times out of 100, we get the same results with about 2.5% or less for the system as a whole. So it's a good sample. As far as the carry, just putting it in perspective, 153 riders, if your ridership ad per day, and this was the last July, was 750, as I heard early, we were getting about 1 in 5 riders to do the survey, which is extremely accurate. And a lot of times your ridership represents 2 boardings, the one person going one way and coming back the other. So we had a really high percentage of riders who did the survey participate last fall. So you can have a lot of confidence that the data truly does representing your ridership. So let me just share a little bit about the ridership. First, talk a little about some of the characteristics of the users. And it's not a surprise, you've got the University of Oklahoma there. You have a lot of young riders. You can see 43% of your riders are under 30. You have a lot of folks who are also middle-aged, 30 to 61. And then you have a slightly smaller percentage than we see in Oklahoma City that are over 62. But you definitely are serving people of all ages, which is great. When we look at the racial distribution, you can see blacks and African Americans account for about 29% of the riders in Norman. You actually have a relatively high percentage of Asians. They're actually 24% of the 28% you see in the other at the bottom set of bars in this chart. You have about 8% Hispanics, and you can see as far as the overall white represents about 4 in 10 of the riders. When we ask people what the main purpose of their trip, you can see the #1 reason for Norman riders is that they're using it to go to school. 30% of the people reported university trips, so you're getting great engagement there. You can also see that when it comes to shopping and dining entertainment, that's about 1/3 of the trips, and a little over 1/4 are work trips. So you have a lot of different types of people using the system for different reasons. So you're not just fulfilling one purpose, you're actually fulfilling the needs of people for a variety of purposes. When we ask people whether or not they use the transit system on a daily basis, you can see in Norman compared to everyone else, you have a significantly higher percentage that's using it almost every day. You can see about 2 out of 3 riders in Norman reported they use it daily compared to about half in Oklahoma City, and you can see obviously the streetcar is a lot lower. As far as the overall satisfaction with transit service, did you all bring celebration like balloons and cake today for this presentation, or is that later? So anyway, you have some of the best ratings I've seen for any transit survey or any transit system in the nation. So, and not only do you have great ratings, they got better during COVID. And I want to put this into perspective. We actually did the survey initially shortly after COVID started. We then did this survey well into COVID. And what happened is people who are using transit services in the early parts of COVID tend to be very forgiving. So back in 2020, people were just happy the bus was running. By 2021, they pretty much had returned the expectations they had before COVID. And so most systems saw satisfaction levels plummet. But you'll notice here that most of the areas that were assessed, we saw significant improvements. Ease of getting information, available of accessible stops, your COVID safety procedures, safe operation of buses, ease of locating bus stops, and cleanliness of bus stops all improved significantly from 2021 compared to 2020. You can see a little bit lower for safety at bus stops and frequency of service, but all in all, a lot to be proud of. And in addition, take a look at the percentages that combined. You've got 95% for safe operation of buses, 93% overall for cleanliness of buses. You're just doing great. In fact, the lowest rated area was at 75%. Again, these are giving positive ratings. I'm not showing ratings of 3, 2, and 1. So these are just your 4s and 5s. So a lot to be proud of. In addition, this is perhaps what you can be most proud of is compared to other transit systems in the country, you're setting the standard in every single area to be assessed. If you take a look at this, you'll see Norman is the the orange bar. The national average for transit systems is in green, and you'll see for each and every area assessed, not only are you above the national average, you're significantly above the average. For example, take a look at courtesy of drivers. These are your folks who are working day in and day out. 93% giving positive ratings in Norman, 69% nationally. So you've got a lot of good people doing a good job meeting the expectations of your riders. So again, if you didn't bring balloons and cakes today, I guess you can do that for your next meeting.
Taylor, could we have him?
The other,
Hold on, Chris, just a second.
sure.
Our city manager and our mayor just came into the room. Would you repeat maybe that best city you've ever seen?
Sure. Well, I guess if you're just coming in, if you're not familiar, I think you know ETC, we're actually, I think, doing a park survey for the city right now, or we recently did. We do transit research for 27, or I don't remember what the chart said, of 35 of the largest transit systems in the country. For example, we just finished Dallas and LA Metro. I presented Kansas City's yesterday. Your ratings are really the best that we've seen of any system around the country. And the other piece too is the overall satisfaction for most systems plummeted this year. We found that when we did surveys at the beginning of COVID, most riders were forgiving, and we actually saw satisfaction ratings go up because people were just happy that the bus was running. But by 2021 and into 2022, people have gone back to expecting what they expected before COVID. And so most systems have actually seen dramatic decreases in satisfaction, but you've seen significant increases in most areas. You know, we saw a little decline in safety and frequency of service, but all in all, you're doing great. And then we compared you nationally to our database of all the transit systems where we have data, you'll notice you're significantly above average in every single category where it was assessed. Particularly strong when it comes to how your employees have been treating and are viewed by your customers. And I'll look at that in the courtesy of drivers. You'll see you're at 93%, nationally it's at 69%. And frankly, this was a really hard year for getting bus operators and drivers to even show up to work. So there were a lot of challenges, and you've done extremely well, which is one of the reasons it doesn't surprise me that your overall rating is now 32% above the national average. In the streetcar, it's unique. We expect it to be high. But for bus systems, Norman is clearly setting the standard. Overall satisfaction, 90%, national is just 58%. So that's why I was saying you should have some balloons and cakes or something, because not only did you do well, you went in the opposite direction that almost every other transit agency went in last year when it comes to satisfaction by improving and going up significantly when everyone else has gone down. But with that said, you don't just do the survey to celebrate. There are some opportunities to do better. So one of the things that we ask people are what are the attributes that are most important to them. And you can see as we looked at it, making sure availability of bus stops, you can see the frequency of buses arriving on time. Those matter a lot to people, and it makes sense given that a lot of your users are using it to get to school and get to work. It needs to be on time. People need to access the stops reasonably. So those aren't surprises when it comes to things that are top priorities. What was a surprise for me this year is that the safety while waiting at bus stops, though it declined a little bit, that actually became one of the #1 issues in a lot of communities this past year, but it didn't seem to be a major concern for your riders. So that means that whatever was happening in your system wasn't affected negatively, at least safety concerns that many systems around the country experience. In addition, when we looked at our analysis, what we do is we take how important the item is, and we also look at how well you're performing to give you opportunities for improvement. Some of these opportunities are a lot more costly than others, so sometimes I try to take a look at, well, what are the things that you could do that are the low-cost opportunities for improvement? Clearly, having more buses, having them on our right time, more frequency of service, those tend to cost a lot, but just good information at your stops and keeping your buses clean, you're already doing it well, but continuing to do it will probably have a positive impact, and dollar per dollar may give you the most bang for your buck moving forward this year. So just to summarize, there's a lot to be proud of. You don't get to be rated 32% above the national average by accident. You guys are doing an extremely good job meeting your customer needs. And frankly, of the 15 areas that were rated, seeing satisfaction improving in 13 of them, when almost every other system in the country has seen significant declines, is a lot to be proud of. And then finally, just looking at those opportunities for important and perhaps emphasizing those that are low-cost opportunities will help you continue to improve satisfaction in the future. So that's just a brief but hopefully brilliant summary of your findings. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but I'd certainly be happy to stick around a little bit if you do.
Okay, so this is done every fall, so we're about to do another one. Is that how I understand it?
Can you hear the questions very well, Chris?
Yeah, we do them each fall, so I think the next one is scheduled again for sometime this fall.
And then, yeah, it takes a few months for them to compile the results, and then I think they just presented to the or Embark board in July.
Yeah, it was actually, they're I think in July and just at the council just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
For Oklahoma City.
So I think we brought.
A number of surveys, so we're kind of compiled the results of all of them together, which is why it isn't released immediately. But the data is available to Embark as soon as we're done.
So I think August last year we brought you the last year's results. So we hope to bring you about. We don't have a meeting in July usually, so probably every August we'll bring you these results. And I would just like to say, while this is really exciting, hopefully. I think the only way to go is down in a lot of areas. So hopefully we don't go down next year.
Yeah, sure.
But we are making a lot of significant changes like we've already talked about. Not this fall, but next fall when the survey is done. So hopefully we stay with expectations and can increase the satisfaction with those changes, although they're already high.
So the survey 2 years from now will tell us how well the route changes and the new bus central hub, how all that's being received.
Yeah, and we actually used these results, or maybe it was the first year results, I'm getting my timelines mixed up, with the Go Norman Transit Plan. So we did our survey with the Go Norman Transit Plan, ETC was doing their survey, so we kind of matched notes and made sure we were trying to hit the wants of the riders with both surveys. But.
So, Councilmember Holman, you bring up a great point. Think about the infrastructure as it exists today with the hub where the hub is and a much older bus fleet than where we will be in 2 years with a new hub and better restroom access and buses that don't rattle as much and they're on time. They're able to make the fleet call for service every morning much more frequently. Although it's really hard to improve on where you are, there's such a huge investment happening that I'm really looking forward to seeing how well received these investments are by our riders. And Taylor did ensure me he did not respond to the survey 900 times to help influence those numbers. So thank you for your ability to
different
hold that.
mustaches, right?
Okay. Yeah, very helpful information, I think, and helpful to know too that most of the people ride it daily and are doing it for things like school and work. And so I think those are pretty important points to think about as we move forward. Any comments or Councilmember Schuler?
Sure, just I guess some comments about the points that Councilmember Holman brought up earlier about access to information and things like that. And it looks like that is something that is being found here as well. So just kind of want to re-highlight some of the concerns that you've heard from the community and just say that it continues to be an opportunity for us to improve and kind of think about what does that look like in terms of how do we get information out? What is the best way? But also thinking about cost and understanding all of those aspects of it. But
That QR code idea is simple enough, even for me, to be able to figure it out. And I think the ability for us to create that QR code that just takes you right to the website, kind of a one button click to everything we need to know, access to the new phone app and all those pieces that'll be coming. We'll work with our IT people about the creation. How can you make it as simple as possible when you walk up to a bus stop for the first time? How do I know where I'm going to go? And I think that's the type of thing that we can do to really make it user-friendly.
so about the app, is this going to be specific to transit? Because I know you and I have talked about an app more generally for the city too. And so like, is that being incorporated into that larger conversation or is it separate?
This one definitely more transit specific, and when we're thinking long-term RTA and connectivity to all the buses in Oklahoma City and Edmond and, out to Tinker and even out to, Will Rogers Airport at some point, that this will be big and beefy where you don't want to confuse it with where to report a pothole. So we think, that QR code at the bus stop would direct you that's really public transit focused.
Only transit, yeah.
Okay.
And the system that we updated and installed in buses about 2 years ago, Synchromatics, that's what gives us the ability to provide this app. They do the AVL system, automatic vehicle locator, they do automatic passenger counting on it. So we just had to work out a lot of bugs to get to this point of being able to unveil it. So
So Ms.
Really
Verska is working on the other device for all the other fun and exciting communication pieces.
I know in 2022, we assume pretty much everybody has a cell phone now,
Right.
but I would be interested to know if there was a way we could do a survey about, or if we already know the information, what riders do have smartphones, because like the owner-friendly market still uses a flip phone, so there's still some out there.
Chris, I don't know if you've been able to follow the
And then
conversation, but
if there's riders that don't have anything
We
at
do,
all.
I don't know if we asked the question last year, but I know in the past we've asked whether or not people have smartphones and other technology. I just off the top of my head don't remember if it was on this
Yeah.
year's survey.
We can go
But
back
we
to the
haven't.
survey results and look at that, but I remember there being a question, how do you get your information,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
while this wasn't, this was a brief overview of all the good things, right? But we'll go back and look and we can send that out to you. But
I'm definitely, under 40 here, but I'm still weary a bit about fully transitioning to
right,
digital everything, especially since lower income folks that are more likely to ride the bus are people that are the most likely to not have one.
and that's why it's
potentially.
important to have those paper copies of the routes on there, so we'll definitely look
Okay.
into that.
Anything else? Would you like to join the table, Mayor?
No, I'm happy, right back here. Thank you.
All right, okay. Thank
Thanks,
you very
Chris.
much.
All right, if you need anything, just let me know.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right.
We'll pull up this guy for you all. Oh, that's not the first slide. What am I doing?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Taylor. And we'll move on to item number 2, actually. Item number 2. The discussion regarding the feasibility analysis for underground utilities on the Jenkins Avenue Bond project. There's a stretch of Jenkins that has overhead utilities around Reeves Park, doing lots of work around Reeves Park, obviously, to make it nicer. We're about to do a road widening and improvement beautification project on Jenkins, and a lot of folks have asked about this. I've been interested in it, and some of the trees recently were cut for those overhead lines, so it kind of attracted even more interest in that potential since we're already doing a project. So I appreciate staff putting together some information for us about this.
Sure. Scott Sturt, city engineer. Tim Miles, our capital projects manager, here tonight to help us through this. We always enjoy the opportunity to come talk about our projects. We're proud of each and every one of them, and a lot of time and effort goes into each one. So Jenkins, we're going to talk about that for a little bit, and I always like to make sure that everybody understands the history, where the projects came from, how we got to where we are. I think without that, sometimes it's hard to have a good conversation moving forward. So this is the map. Jenkins is part of the 2019 bond package. That's 20 total projects over about 10 years, $142 million worth of work, very large, voter approved, very successfully voter approved. We're really happy with what we put together, but it's a lot of work and a lot of effort. And I think that when you look at this map, you probably have all seen it a lot, but we've got everything from the far northwest side of town down to the far southeast side of our urbanized area. And you can see a lot that goes on there here in the core area as well as around campus. So a wide range of projects. I do want to point out that there were some differences in this bond package. Some of these projects, in fact, the ones that you see up there in blue, so the blue lines instead of the red lines, were supposed to be fully funded by the bond. And what we found out is since we made this bond package, they changed the scoring for our applications to get that federal funding. Because of that, the projects that used to be a slam dunk, guaranteed, go get the money, don't even worry about it, aren't getting the money now. So we came to council with a proposal to change which projects we would do to try to get federal funding for some of these projects that weren't going to be federally funded, so we could take those funds and move them to projects that weren't scoring as well to try to get this whole package to balance. So we've had to play the game here with our partners in ACOG.
Yeah, there's about 9 projects on there that are widening projects that don't score as favorably anymore, but are voter approved, so they're going to have to be done somehow at some point. But all the ones that are inward are all the ones that improve walkability and all those types of things are the 100%. You know,
They did put a much larger emphasis on the complete streets, which all of ours are, so I don't understand why we don't rank better. But another thing that they brought up that really was an increased factor was if it's in a low-income area, and that really benefits other areas in ACOG more than it does Norman. So we've kind of had to fight that too. But we're always out there fighting for our causes and looking for additional funding measures where we can find them. So this was actually the slide that we used in the presentations when we were going around discussing all these programs and we were bringing it to council as we went out to our public. You can see this is just the Jenkins, a lot of photos there of different items. You can see the small map there on the far right side that actually shows the extents of it. It is from Emhoff, roughly, to Lindsay Street. And so it's that entire section along Reeves. Part of the reason this was so important was with the Norman Forward and Reeves Park being made into a much larger youth organization for baseball and softball, and the opportunity for that to become more of a tournament type facility. We really need to do something about the traffic in this area. And also, the university built 2 new parking garages between Timberdale and Lindsay Street, as well as all kinds of new dorms. So there's a lot of new factors and pressures on this roadway that we need to account for. We're looking at, we actually did say we're going to 4-lane it, traffic signals at Timberdale, new sidewalks, multimodal paths, decorative lighting, fixing the storm drainage, trying to do some landscaping. Again, a complete street. We consider a complete multimodal street.
Roundabout, Scott, at Constitution and Emhoff.
Gonna get there.
Got it.
You're jumping ahead of me
And
here.
one other question, timing wise, and like not understanding what, like asphalt failure means. I know northbound on Jenkins by Reeves Park, there's some spots where you can see on the passenger side tire line, it's alligator cracked and starting to sink. I'm assuming that was timing wise anticipated that we're gonna have to rebuild the street anyway, so we might as well.
We're always looking at that. We do a pavement study every year. Well,
That's what council got
we do it over
today.
we do it over 5 years. So 20% gets studied, and we get back a book every year that does all the streets. It gives us a rating on them. It does take in those items: the surface, the structural stability, and we do watch that as part of the roads that we're considering, as well as what we think is going to be well received and what roads need expanding or additional treatments.
Thank you.
So this is a very early rendering. I'm going to tell you this is not accurate today necessarily, but just to kind of give you an idea, this is that nice kind of artist rendering that we can all really understand real easy. You can see the 2 lanes each direction there with the raised center median. We'd like to do some landscaping there. really, when we were going out to this, what we said is we wanted to build basically what is on Lindsay Street between Jenkins and the railroad tracks. That was really well received. It's working very well on that corridor. Probably that's kind of that same level of landscaping is about what OU is expecting, just they want just a few trees. They don't want high landscaping maintenance anymore, which they said they would take care of that Lindsay Street. They aren't buying in on this one yet. So you can also see we have the multimodal path. And one change that has been made is the sidewalk that you can see there on the left that would be the west side of the road. OU has requested that we make that a wider path also because of the number of students that use that going between the Lloyd Noble, people trying to get to South Campus. So we're making that a little wider also.
Maybe the city manager, the mayor, anybody else that's interested, maybe we could get some sort of meeting with a regent or some regents or those interested to say we're going to this SEC, right? This is the main road into campus to the stadium. And all the teams are going to be driving on to get to the stadium as they come in. Do you really want it to be just a concrete slab in the middle or just a few trees or, you know?
I think all those
maybe
buses
the
do go
university,
9 to
maybe
Jenkins. I think
maybe
you're
they
right.
could have a different view on this as it's really a one-time opportunity for them and us, but I hate to see them.
Go cheap.
Yeah.
So, as our city manager pointed out here, one of the big items, and I've got to say that interesting enough, so this is taking the intersection of Imhoff and Constitution, which right now are those two traffic signals are just slightly apart and really kind of a hassle, taking them and realigning them. And we looked at a number of alternatives how to do this, and we came up with the most efficient and best is to put a roundabout at this location. And that was with a lot of study and a lot of effort. It's interesting to me, but I actually had the university come to me with this idea, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago, and say, we would like to do this. Another thing to point out here is that a lot of the roads that we're going to be working with aren't Norman roads. Imhoff is not a Norman road. It is maintained by the university. Timberdale, between, basically west of Imhoff, is also solely a university road.
And both of those were recently completely redone from Jenkins to
Right. From Chautauqua to Jenkins, yeah, on both of them.
Yeah.
And then Lawrence and Monitor, which are other streets that we'll be impacting, are also university streets. So we're going to be doing some work kind of with them in coordination to getting a lot of this done.
And that little corner of the park, probably some paperwork. I don't know how that will work out if we'll be adding that to the park because it'd be where the road was and partly where some OU property was. So I don't know how that'll work out.
It's currently OU property. We've been meeting with OU for 2 years now on this project. 2 years.
Could you go back to that previous slide?
So we've been meeting with the university for about 2 years regarding utility relocation, right-of-way, and we're at the point where we're getting ready to get very serious with OU on right-of-way for all this. In fact, we're starting to get all of our information back from our right-of-way agents. But yeah, that area between Constitution and where the new road is, that's all university property. Do they want to maintain it? Do they want to say, hey, city, this is kind of bad property for us? Those are definitely discussions that will be held. I don't know how that will be held in relation to our right-of-way talks. If they bring it up and want to discuss it, we can certainly
It's definitely
cover it.
a significant amount of space that would be added to Reeves Park, and that area was used for the medieval fair this year, which was pretty cool too, I thought. And so it'd be nice being able to do that without the street being there.
Yeah,
So,
without having to cross that busy road.
so it could be a pretty, and it was a factor we talked about when we were considering this for the senior center location, was that we might have some additional space as well in this corner. So.
And one of the odd discussions that was brought up initially was maybe the city would take over maintenance of Imhoff now that it's been redone in about the past 5 years in exchange for some of this right-of-way. So,
I wouldn't be against that.
That's a swamp underneath there. I used to be the supervisor for the university that was in charge of that. It is a mess.
Soup, pavement on soup.
Well, yeah, they did redo it recently, so that might not be a bad idea. Councilmember Schuler?
While we're still looking at this one, so we have the two kind of stub streets here on Chesapeake and Lawrence, and so we have like the like archaeological survey is right there. what is the impact on them? I mean, I know that there are other routes to kind of go down, but like, has any traffic study been done on, like, I know that they're minimal, but
To say that
like-
we've done a traffic study of what the impact's gonna be to them, no. We've done a traffic impact study overall. That is too close to the roundabout for it to be ineffective, and it's really going to hurt the overall level of service for all the roadways. We talked to OU extensively about this. They're in agreement that this is fine and they're okay with it. You will have to find another route to the archaeological survey. It's a quarter of a block.
No,
They're
I
short
understand.
blocks. But yeah, we did spend a lot of time and a lot of discussion with our consultants, Freeze and Nichols, on this project. And it was really just determined that having those come in that close to the roundabout would really hinder the serviceability of the roundabout and actually be a safety factor.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes total sense. I was just wondering if they're prepared
We've made it clear and.
to them, at least the people that work there and are
Yeah.
utilizing that on a
We
kind of
haven't actually talked to the archaeological survey directly, but we have worked with OU and they.
well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they know about it. So
Come on.
I'm just
A&E Services talks to everybody.
No, I work at the university, and there are lots of things that you do not know. I mean, you're talking at different levels, and so I think that there should be at least some outreach just to communicate that this is being forecasted for
And-
them, and just that like there will be an impact. Like I do understand about like the functionality of the roundabout and the traffic flow and all of those things, but I think we owe it to the members of the public that are
Well, and we're just now
utilizing
starting to
that.
reach out and work with all of the stakeholders, because we've been working with the university for a long time. We've had meetings with property owners further to the north that are private property owners, but we aren't at the point yet where we're really, there's a certain point because we're using the federal funding, we kind of got to follow some steps, and you can't get too far out of those steps or they kind of get upset with you, and we do that just on the edge anyways on a lot of our stuff. But we're expecting to be sitting down with the university and these other property owners, but we'll put it in to make sure we reach out to them directly. We can do that.
Yeah,
That's easy to do.
just saying that sometimes you talk to the university and that doesn't filter all the way down. So
And it's worth noting too that it's kind of a bookend of two new roundabouts in Norman, the one on the north
Yeah.
end there, Jenkins and Flood, and then, or not technically Jenkins and
But
Flood, but
Jenkins
what turns
too.
into Jenkins. And so it's pretty neat, I think.
Right, and of course, we've got it shown on there, it's kind of faint, but that is where the OU Lubs field will be going for the women's softball, right there. And we are trying to talk to the university, we're hoping they'll partner with us to do something substantial in that roundabout like we're trying to do on the north end with our Norman Arts Council and the money that
Yeah.
council allowed us to spend to do some artwork in that one. Yeah. Couple of other things just worth noting here. Timberdale, currently, if you look at that, it's offset and it's really awkward. And as that becomes more used by people trying to leave the softball and baseball complex at Reeves, that needs to be aligned. So you can see there to the left how we're aligning that. It's going to be a little skewed, but it's going to work well. And that will be a signalized intersection. So it's going to give us another signalized intersection and the roundabout. And then there's going to be also an exit in the center. So there's going to be a lot of access. It's really going to increase the access into Reeves Park and make it a lot better. And then there to the right, that's the north parking garage. I always want to say the south, but it's the north. And right now it comes out kind of in a weird place, just a little bit north of Stinson. We have worked with OU. They've agreed to let us rebuild that drive. And we will take that out to the light at Stinson, so it will become a four-way stop. And it keeps us from having another median break. And it makes it a lot safer for everybody. And it makes it a lot more accessible for people trying to utilize that where they have a signalized left turn to get into it. They're really concerned about pedestrian crossings on the north side of that. We're working with them to put in a crosswalk. And we're like, it doesn't matter where we put a crosswalk. Those students are going to cross wherever they're standing. So we're trying our best, but we're working with them on that too to make sure they're being good partners and working well with them. So right-of-way is one of our next big hurdles. It's going to be very difficult. There's a lot of right-of-way in this one, as you can imagine. You saw the big swath there for the Constitution and Imhoff. That's all new right-of-way that we got to get from OU. But there's a lot of little pieces in between. This is at Timberdale and Jenkins. You can see there the kind of the orange color is what we need permanently for this roadway. Red is what we kind of need temporarily from OU to work with them. And then also the purple are driveway easements. Each one of those has a different amount and a different way we handle it in our ODOT. But you can see how much is just at this one corner. Now you multiply that by this whole section. And there are private property owners here that we're working with. We're trying to find ways to reduce the impacts of this construction and this future impact on them and their homes. And we've started those conversations, but there's a lot more to be held on that.
We've had an hour or two-hour meeting last Friday about it.
And that's the second or third one that we've had, so. The other item.
Squeeze, just in that little portion, really. The rest of it.
Yeah.
But right there is a little, Councilmember Grant?
Are they upset? Or?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would say that there are some big old trees that are right up on the street right there. There's one house where the driveway is very skinny and their cars back to back are already like touching the sidewalk, and it's just going to take some space, quite a bit. I wouldn't say take. It's right of way that's already there that they've been accustomed to using for a long time. So it's a work in progress, I should
So
say.
like for the trees, you could be like, if you know where that's going and what might be leaving, you could suggest what could be planted and where to.
Yes, yeah.
And we do a lot of that in a lot of this is worked out during our right of way. And we've got different options. Like if we're going to redo a driveway, we can say, you give us a temporary easement and we will come in and build it for you. And we can do this concrete for you and we can build a wall here. But a lot of times for trees, they can say, well, we got these trees and a number is assigned to those trees, $500. I'm just picking a number.
Okay.
And we can say, okay, so those are damages to you. We will pay you for those trees, $500 a tree. And they come back and go, oh no, that's $1,000 tree. And we go, okay, $800. I mean, it's a real negotiation. And we do work through our right-of-way agent directly with them. Legal's involved in the whole process with us. And we have to follow federal standards on how we acquire this. So it's very laid out, and really we're in a tight window of what we can and can't do. But there's a lot that we can offer a property owner or try to do to help them. For example, the Millers. Mm-hmm. The Millers who have a one car wide driveway and they park back to back and they're almost on top of the current sidewalk. They will be across the next sidewalk. We had a long conversation with her about how could they reimagine the front of their house to get two cars side by side. And so we do things like that. And I mean, we had one on another site where we thought we were going to have to take a house completely, and it was an old family home, and we would have had to buy the 25 acres with it. And instead, we went out of our way to find ways to avoid that and maintain this old family homestead home.
24.
And they,
right?
yeah, and she moved into it after the project was done. So our first effort is always to try to help and do whatever we can for our
there's
There's plenty of
citizens.
opportunity to like find a solution.
Yeah, and based on our meeting last week, it's more than a year away before end of next year potentially to bid this project because it scored well for federal funding and.
Right, we actually have federal funding, and I'll show that in a second, but we actually the earliest we got to bid would be, help me out, November of next year.
And we're not currently anticipating having to consider any eminent domain for this project. So, and hopefully if we can still working with those neighbors, but I think we can get there to the point where they're not gonna, they will be okay with the additional that we talked about on the corner there especially, so.
So another item we have to do is we have to really worry about utilities. And I just threw this up here because this is probably one of the weirdest projects I've worked on, one of the most difficult utility projects. Each one of those colored lines, there's a dashed one and a solid one. The dashed represents what's got to be moved, and the solid is where we're going to move it to. And just when you start talking about it, there's city water and city fiber through here. And city water, They're hoping to go out to bid as early as next month to start moving their water line. But then you've got ONG, AT&T, we have, of course, OG&E, we have Info Fiber, Cox Communications, and then OU put fiber, water, gas, electric, and multiples of some of those in our right-of-way without ever working with us. So we've got to get all, and the hard part is, we've got to get them to move all their stuff outside of the right-of-way so that we have room to move all of our stuff within the right-of-way.
To give you an idea about what the scope of the OU effort is, just to relocate their utilities, it's a $5 million exercise just on that stretch of Jenkins. So it is a ginormous undertaking. And then each utility typically moves their own, so.
Yeah. And if it's a franchise utility and we have to have them relocate for a road project, they do so at their cost. So, and we'll be talking more about that here in a minute too. We're engineers, we always got to talk about the budget, big numbers here. The current total estimate, it says construction, but this involves everything, including design and everything, is about $10.1 million. The construction management that was added when this project became a federally funded project is about another $900,000. So let's call it an $11 million project right now. We got the maximum amount of federal funds available at 7.5. That's the max they will give on any project. So that leaves us the city share at about $3.5 million. So we got some surplus funds there. It's a little over $6 million. And so that's a really good item, and we're proposing to take that, well, we're not proposing, we told council that we would take that money and move that onto other projects, such as the first unfunded project that was going to get federal funds is Cedar Lane. And so we look at taking this and accumulating other funds to have enough funds to do that project. That project initially was going to have $7.5 million of federal funds. So you can see we're getting really close to being able to knock that one out just with this one. Just quick talk, we talked a lot of, time-wise, where are we at? So you can see if you get down there to about the revised right-of-way plans, we actually have those in hand now. We're working on getting those final right-of-way information out to all the owners. So we're trying to get our right-of-way finished by the end of December. And that is so we have the land available to start moving all these utilities where we need them to go. So 90% plans are then due in January, expecting our final plans somewhere in June, and we're hoping to get on the first available bid opening in November 2023, and that would put us under construction in February 2024. I know this looks like a lot of time. We're being told that just to get electrical wire to even do an electrical project can take up to 12 months. So we're looking at potentially 12 months just to get OU's electric out of our way so we can start moving everybody else. So that's why time is of the essence. We're moving very quickly. We're probably, even though 6% plans are submitted, we're probably at about 75 to 80% plans. A lot of work has gone into this. More work has gone into this project than any that I've worked on here for the preliminary stuff to get OU information they need so we can keep them moving on decision making.
And Scott, will this be an ODOT managed project?
It will be an ODOT because we got federal funds. ODOT bids and manages the project. We just get to pay for a whole bunch of it. But we don't step out of it. Our construction inspectors are on site daily. Tim is our project manager on this project. He will be out there daily. We do not just walk away. We're there. We consider ourselves as liaisons for our citizens because their contractor isn't looking out for them. Right. We do. And so we do that, and then also just to make sure that they're building what we are paying for. But they pay, that's what that construction engineering was. They pay a firm to go out there and do the hard inspection, so we're more just pass through. But we keep a very active role throughout the entire construction process. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim to talk a little bit more about the OG&E underground relocation possibilities on this project.
Thanks, Scott. So this slide kind of gives an overview of the areas where there's current overhead utilities. There's a blue line and also leaders that kind of show you the limits of all the overhead that would need to be relocated underground if you decide to do that on this project. For example, Timberdale, and as Scott mentioned, it's a private street. It actually has continuous overhead underground well beyond the project limits, but we're working within about 200 feet of the intersection, so we would recommend going underground for about 250 feet on each side of the intersection because you have to stop somewhere. And then on the east side of Jenkins, between Timberdale and Constitution, there's overhead again. We're going to have some photos coming up on the next slide. And then Constitution, since we're realigning Constitution to the east, generally the overhead lines go just beyond the end of the project, but Constitution Street is kind of a companion project that will be coming about a year after this one, hopefully, if federal funds work out as anticipated. And so if we relocate that as a part of this project, then that would take care of both projects. Then Lawrence is the first street east of Jenkins. You can see where the realignment kind of goes between that. So we would propose to go underground there. And then at Monitor, kind of by the Norman Fire Station 3, there's a small segment of overhead at that location. So it's about 5,400 feet or just over a mile of linear overhead location. That didn't count 3 wires or however many wires they have at each location, but that's about a mile just within the limits of overhead that would need to be relocated. So this next slide kind of shows the existing conditions. The left slide is of Jenkins, and Councilmember Holman mentioned the trees that have been cut down already or trimmed, which we hate to see. But it also shows, so the overhead are the upper smaller wires that you see on that.
I hate to see it too. I'm sorry to interrupt. I hate to see it when the trees are in some cases shorter and on the other side of the sidewalk and 3 feet on the other side of the sidewalk from it. So it's like, it seems like was it really necessary to do that to them? That just really, it makes me really angry.
That picture, and I was meeting with folks at OG&E talking about some residential undergrounding opportunities. And when you think about, what is it we would underground? Well, the top 3 wires, that's the electricity. And then the big fat one you see lower, typically that's the AT&T piece. So are we just undergrounding the electric and the pole stays up and they cut the top of the pole off? Or in the open trench, are they putting in conduit for electricity and conduit for the telephone lines too? So fascinating conversation when you think about each neighborhood and each run. It's got a different configuration of who was also co-locating on each one of those poles. So it's not just the OG&E part, it's AT&T and or Cox and or whoever else might have.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was headed with this. So on Jenkins, there is Cox and AT&T overhead. Those are the 2 bigger wires that are lower down the pole. There's also a Wi-Fi system there in front of Reeves Park, and OU doesn't seem to claim ownership of it, so it must be a city type thing. But if it needs to go back, Wi-Fi has to be above ground and not below ground. So those would be separate poles somewhere else for the Wi-Fi.
We'll have street lights along the new street, I assume, right? Decorative light poles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that would be an opportunity for that. Yes. So then along on the right side is Constitution, and that again has the overhead poles. It only has 1 underhung on that, which is AT&T. Cox is actually underground in this area. And we do have some conflicts with that on the Constitution Street project, but
All these poles are gonna have to be moved anyway on both projects,
No.
or no?
and that's the key thing that
So-
I was going to talk about a little bit later. And because we do not have to move them, it makes us have to pay more than we would if they were impacted. So I'm spoiling future slides here, but that's
Spoiler
that's how
alert.
we go. So this is Lindsay Street. The left side shows it before we went underground back. This is from 2008 in front of Homeland there on the south side of the road. And so that's the overhead electric. Today, you see it's underground. But we do have now the pedestals that you have to deal with. And that's another issue that we're going to face on this project, because the best place to put the underground would be underneath the big bike trail. That's the best open spot we have. And since you have pedestals, you really can't do that unless you're moving your conduit when you have pedestals, things like that. And we have a fairly small area to put those in within existing right-of-way. So We would still have above ground pedestals for both electric, Cox, and AT&T, so.
And they described it to us, the two big round cans you see on the pole, the transformers. That's what's inside the pedestal now at the ground. And they said, if money is no object, we can underground those too. But it takes a bunch of real estate to underground those transformers. So there becomes a point where you just think, oh my gosh, that is insanely expensive if you didn't want to see any of it possible.
Right.
It's very, very expensive.
That's something I didn't know, so that's good to
But,
know.
you know, Sean shares the term with us on these of bubs and lubs, big ugly boxes and little ugly boxes. And to be honest with you, I did I worked on this on the Lindsay Street project, and we also had to purchase a lot more right-of-way because these wouldn't fit within the existing right-of-way. And this project he's going to get some cost in a minute, but Lindsay Street, we did what you said, where it was one trench with the electric and then the communications on top. It had to be constructed a very certain way, and we spent $600,000 building that trench. And then we paid OG&E $1.7 million to relocate their lines. And then we paid AT&T and Cox and City Fiber. And I don't remember those costs, but the total cost on this project was about $2.3 million. And I don't know that we would get those parties to agree to one common trench again in the future. They each want their own home in the right-of-way, which Tim's going to get to here in a minute.
So this is, it's kind of hard to see, it's kind of washed out on there, but this is a typical section that when we started talking to the various utility owners, we were walking through, potential locations to put the various utilities, and then things have changed since then. The blue box basically is the new storm pipeline. It's going to be a wide, shallow box to address some of the drainage problems that we have today. And that's basically between Timberdale and Reeves Park where we're going to have all that. But so underneath the roadway is not a good location for the utilities anyway, but we're putting our storm sewer under there to make as much space for the various utility owners. And as Scott mentioned, before we were having a wider footprint for right away, and then we were going to put some of the franchise utilities in those locations and maybe leave some OU's utilities where they were if they would work in place. But now we've really narrowed up the right of way on both sides of the road, so it's going to be difficult to do the utility relocations. The first person in that's going to do their relocation will be the best, and then each time it's going to be more challenging not to hit the other one when you just have a foot or two between each utility. One thing I will mention on this slide, the purplish color is kind of resembles a utility pole. Well, what it ended up working out to be is the utility pole falls in that 3-foot section that between the back of curb and the trail. So it's in a grassed area now. And so currently we have no impacts with OG&E or the overhead utilities that are underhung on those poles. And so I think that's partly why we haven't come to you sooner about going underground here, is because we knew that might slow the project down some, but it also was going to work with the current design.
Can you show the picture of the street again? Jenkins, 2 slides back, I guess, with the tree, that one, yeah.
Yeah.
So the
So the
poles
new
where they
back
are
of curb,
currently.
the new back of curb is going to come up about a foot from those poles, a foot and a half. And so the hike bike trail is basically where it's going to be today.
So the poles are gonna be right on the edge of the street, right between the sidewalk and the street.
Yes.
Strip there, okay, okay.
Yes. And then right away is somewhere between the sidewalk and those existing trees there at the park.
So to achieve the widening, it's getting wide on both sides.
Yes, yes. Now, one thing that helps us on the west side, and that's where many of the utilities are going, is OU already has nice wide sidewalks away from the back of curb, and they've opted for us to reconstruct as needed to their standards, and then we won't replicate a sidewalk behind the curb on that side so that we have room for other utilities. So,
So in
really,
this picture, the new lane is gonna be where that ditch is.
yes,
where the cars are currently driving now will be the inside lane going north.
Yes.
And then the lane that's currently going south, that would be the center median,
Yes.
roughly. And then the other two new lanes are going to be on where the softball stadium sign is. Okay.
We were trying to save the historic trees. That's south base type stuff. I mean, I don't know all the details of it, but
Well, OG
but now
packed them up,
It's-
so.
Yes, okay.
okay. So these are the costs that we have currently. Everybody kind of gives them with a grain of salt, just because everything's fluctuating so much, and if they have to pay extra to expedite something, it increases, but it's about $1.3 million to relocate OG&E, Cox, and AT&T. And as we alluded to earlier, if they're in conflict with the project, OG&E partners with us some, where they will pay the difference. They will absorb the cost of what it would cost to relocate overhead. But the problem is underground is 3 to 5 times for the type of lines that we have here. And so that $1 million is basically, since we're not in conflict, we would have to pay the full $1 million, as well as the full Cox and AT&T costs. They're not feeder lines, or the cost would be even more. It'd be about 4 to 7 times more. So it's just a lot more expensive to go underground. But since we're not, since we're not in conflict, we're going to pay 100% of these costs. And this is the case on Jenkins.
But that includes the whole map you just showed us?
Yes,
Timberdale
yes.
and Constitution?
That's all those areas.
All that, okay.
That's what we sent out to everybody when they gave us the costs, so, yes. So, basically, at this point, we're looking for council direction. As Scott had mentioned, the relocation wasn't part of the bond funds. We're trying to save as much as we can for future projects, so we'd rather not use the bond excess funds if possible to do that. And there could be potential right-of-way implications because of the big ugly boxes and the little ugly boxes. And then the material shortages could get us in a little bit of a bind and having everything cleared by November of next year. But so we basically are asking for council direction, as soon as possible, hopefully in September, early September if possible. And then if you have thoughts on funding sources, things like that, so.
Well, I was honestly expecting it, and I understand it may be more, but I was definitely expecting it to be a lot more than that, potentially. So I feel less anxious about that than I did before. My proposal would be, because I do think it's something that we've heard from the public a lot about. I think it's something people want to see or would like to see happen. My proposal would be, if there was a way to negotiate with OG&E that, I'd be willing to pay for half of it, or find a way in the city's budget to cover half of this cost. If the rest of council would agree, of course, but if OG&E would maybe be willing to cover the other half as a good faith or good, build some trust with the community right before you're about to ask the community to vote on a 25-year franchise agreement.
Also,
So say, hey,
to
we're
look at-
going to help you out do this project, as a, show that we're serious about doing the right thing going forward for the next 2 decades.
From a reliability standpoint, I mean, that's an easy inroad to the conversation. And then ask them how much they have been spending on tree trimming that they'll never have to spend again. So we can build up kind of a good case study to say, and I agree, $1 million sounded like good news, because I thought it would be much larger than that. That probably does wind up being budget dust in a budget as big as theirs. So we'll hit them up on the reliability side and the cost savings of not having to maintain the above ground stuff as a place to have that conversation, if that's the direction council wants to go.
I definitely understand and appreciate the concerns staff has about it. I feel like it would be a missed opportunity if we did not try while we're doing this project. I don't see us going back in and tearing stuff up again anytime in the near future. So, Councilmember Schuler?
yes to all of that. I looked as soon as I saw the agenda and that this was on the agenda, I checked out the presentation. So I'm just going to be honest, I've been stewing about this since I checked it out and knew that this was the conversation that was coming. And I mean, I am really in line with what Councilmember Holman kind of just laid out. It's been an ongoing conversation with OG&E, I mean, over the last several months, and I think prior to that with previous council members and councils, ahead of their franchise agreement. And I mean, I think that this is the new conversation that we need to continue to have on every project, major project, road construction project that we move forward, because I know for me, and I can only assume for Councilmember Grant, in our core, everything is overhead, pretty much. I mean, it's the old infrastructure of town, and I can't tell you how much service disruption we have in those areas, in Ward 2 and Ward 4, and in, you know, still in parts of Ward 7 too, Ward 1. Like, it is a major problem, and residents, I get complaints all of the time about this, and I will continue to tell them that they can't continue to say, well, it's too costly, it doesn't make sense, when every new construction that is built is underground. That is the best practice that they do with all new development. All of the stuff is, and I get it, because it's easy, nothing's there, they're all, you know, working in conjunction. And I do understand the challenges with the right of way, and I think that makes this a little bit different too. So like I do want to sympathize with that struggle that you're going to have, but I really just feel like we've got to pursue what we can, and frankly, $1 million, I was like, oh, that could have been a whole lot worse, because
That's 10% of the project budget.
I understand. I'm
I
just
mean,
saying.
that's,
It's a lot.
But compared to Lindsay,
I'm just saying compared to what what
but
Lindsay
there's
was.
a difference here. Lindsay was a different carrier line. It was more than this. And I know everybody always throws in well, they put it underground in new neighborhoods, but what's on an arterial road is not the same as what's in a neighborhood.
True.
So you can't put apples and oranges and expect them to taste the same. So that's part of the problem here, is everybody tries to compare those two, but what we have on arterial roadway is carrying more to all those homes, whereas it's already to those homes now when it goes underground in a neighborhood. So that's what we, a lot of times have to look at. But for us, this was never something that we budgeted, and we also never budgeted the additional purchase of right-of-way on these projects. So that's something we have to be really, for us as project managers, we hate it when we come to you and tell you that we can't follow our budget. It hurts us that we didn't do our job. But I mean, it's something that we can always look at and investigate. And on this one, we're lucky it's a small section of it instead of a large section.
and we own a bunch of the right of way, and OU owns a bunch of the right of way, and I think, motivation is there. In my most recent conversation with the folks at OG&E, they had 4 engineers in the room, and we were talking about the neighborhood in Ward 2 that may become Ward 4.
It's our triangle.
And doing the overhead view and identifying the thing to be undergrounded. And I can tell you where you are in your desire. They said, so Nichols Hills is only about 2.5 square miles. And they're doing a homework assignment to underground the entire city. And they identified some federal dollars, and I thought, okay, we'll go find those federal dollars too and help wherever they're applicable. So there's a monumental effort underway wherever we see opportunity to underground. And if different buckets of funding become available, by all means, we're gonna go compete mightily to bring those dollars to Norman to help us underground. And it's a reliability issue in that particular neighborhood, much more than the visual of the trees, because the line is in everybody's backyard. It's not, you don't see it when you're driving down the street like you do here. But there's been this level of cooperation to help us do this homework and find costs, and I'm feeling cooperation like we hadn't felt in a long time.
Yeah, so, speaking of OU, I mean, what is their appetite for this?
They all of their electric is theirs, so they own all that infrastructure, and they'll be moving all theirs, and it's all underground already. Now, if we need right of way, they have been pretty comfortable allowing us to wiggle in the right of way, so that's a huge plus for us. But I mean, either they own it or we own it, right up until we get to the houses north of Timberdale.
Well, and that's where it ends anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thankfully, it's not going in front of any houses except for those duplexes, but that's even on our side of the park side
Exactly.
street. So.
But we can certainly, we can advance this, we can advance our discussions with OG&E and see where we land.
Yeah, I think more of the point too is just that, like, yes, there are projects where it makes sense, but I think there needs to continue to be a concerted conversation about what is their plan moving forward for updated infrastructure. And so, like, that's not to just like derail this project or to like blow the budget here because we can, or because like we're gonna die on this particular hill. But it is a serious conversation that I think OG&E needs to start, I guess, like coming to the table to have like serious discussions about.
With council consensus, I'll initiate that conversation.
Councilor Studley?
Yeah, I think we know the difference between neighborhoods and major arterial roads, and I think that the point is that we've been talking to OG&E even before this council was sitting in these seats about putting lines underground. So this is an opportunity, as we've discussed several times, that when we're doing any type of major construction, how can we put it all back together at the same time to make it look the way that we want it to look? And we want these lines underground. And we've also asked OG&E previously to partner and help us with that, because their complaint is it's too costly. Well, this is an opportunity for them to put their money where their mouth is, because we're helping to assist in this, and we're not asking them to do it alone. So that's why we're saying, go back to OG&E and ask for half. But the other part to that, if they don't do it, we're still gonna do this, right? But why couldn't we just use the surplus money to do it?
We could, but that's
Okay.
going to jeopardize us being able to move forward on a Cedar Lane. When we only have $6.5 million surplus, and now we're going to take 1.2 of that, we've got a way. In my mind, as a program manager on this, is this underground more important than getting another project and then taking that money
How
to
are you
another
planning on
project?
paying on for Cedar Lane anyways?
With this money and with money
So
from
you
some of the
already
other projects.
anticipated this surplus previously?
Yeah, we came to council, we had a whole presentation on
Okay,
this,
okay.
and we came in and we said, if you let us, and we did nice slides and color coded it and tried to, and
Yeah.
said, if you let us go and get this federal money here, we'll take this surplus and move it to the next available project. So that's if council directs us to do that, that's what we'll do. Certainly, we'll follow council's direction. We're not gonna die on a hill.
What do you guys think
But
then?
we
Like,
just need to
if they
have direction.
don't get it from OG&E, what are your thoughts? Like, where do we get the money? Because I want it underground.
We have general surplus funds too, so we don't necessarily have to. I would not necessarily recommend digging into the other projects because they are voter approved.
Yeah.
But we do have other surplus funds.
We will tackle that request with gusto to find a way to make it happen. I agree. This is going to be what a picture coming in off of Highway 9 to get to the university on game day in the SEC. Huge deal, and we can
Softball
clean it
stadium,
up
new Reeves
dramatically.
Park, roundabout.
Absolutely, yeah. That Reeves Park with the new facilities, an opportunity for Norman to show its best, and it's worth the effort on our part to find out how to do it.
Can I make a suggestion next time you come back with this to have, I know that you have that project, like spreadsheet that shows us exactly where those surplus money is going. I remember seeing that.
Yeah,
right?
I
Like,
remember. It's just
all of the
hard
things,
to
but
remember everything.
if
when
we have
we're
it in the
talking.
presentation, then it's helpful for us to see like, okay, yes, we're here, we're getting federal funding for this one, but then the surplus money from this that we had budgeted is going to these.
Right, and basically.
It helps, I think.
Sure, and what we've got to date would basically get us really close on moving forward on Cedar Lane.
Yeah, because I mean, I do agree
On the corner.
with him
It's
that
a-
we don't want to jeopardize other
cheap.
projects.
I actually had that whole presentation up when we were putting this one together and pulling stuff from it and checking numbers,
Yeah.
so.
So, because, again, I know this is making your jobs harder for sure. It's just that I think the consensus seems to be this is a one-time project, a one-shot opportunity we probably have. And with the new softball stadium, new Reeves Park, new roundabout there, and SEC and new fans coming to Norman, it's just kind of something that, and in addition to, not having power lines falling over in the storms and not having to mess with the trees anymore, I think those are all positives that would lead me to want to pursue this, and hopefully have some partnership. We were just talking, maybe we can put a sign up at Reeves Park that says this is in partnership and thanks to OG&E for helping us get this done. Go vote for the franchise utility.
Well, and, sometimes I think what's missed is we worry about those trees that are being trimmed with those going overhead. The chances are when they go underground, those trees are gone. Because when they have to go in there and trench to put 3 lines in AT&T and Cox, they're probably going to take out any tree that's in that area anyways. So I know a lot of people think that they're saving the trees by going underground. They're probably, and then you can't plant a tree back because now you have those lines in the way. So that's another consideration that, to me, thinking about a right-of-way corridor and management of that corridor, everybody wants everything underground and they want street trees. They just aren't compatible. They don't go in the same space. But that's something that we always as project manager are thinking about. And then, you still got these boxes. And I mean, I see them on Lindsay Street.
I don't.
I do,
Just
just
gonna
because
be
I
real-
did it.
real
Yeah.
It drives me nuts.
Well, I know
I
it's
don't.
an issue
I
in
don't
some of
either.
the subdivisions too, where we hear from residents about these boxes going in their front yards and it doesn't look very nice. And so it's
It's a balance.
Kinda what do you
There's just a
want?
lot of balances
Yeah.
that we'll certainly follow council's direction. We'll pursue this underground.
Yeah,
in
I mean,
this
the
section.
trees, I don't know, I think they're gonna have to, we're gonna have to plant new ones anyway somehow
Right tree,
along there,
right
cause
place.
they're,
We gotta come back with
they're
that.
chopped in half.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's more about the comprehensive vision of what we're looking for. And so like to take everything just piece by piece, cool, that's what we can get while we're doing it. It's like the way that we do stormwater now because, not having a funding stream for that, but like, what is it? Right place, right tree, where the lines go, all of that. Like we need a serious conversation about comprehensive vision for this. And I think that ultimately is what we're fighting for. And so, yes, this project is kind of like held up in the middle of all of that.
It's the perfect case study.
Yeah,
It's right here in front of
exactly.
Can we actually talk about some of those things and move the needle? Start having serious conversations about, yes, we might lose trees if we underground, but where do we plant them in the right place so that in the future that's not happening and we think thoroughly about that.
We could maybe save a couple of them.
Some trees are conducive to that, and some species they won't survive. But
Okay.
worth the conversation.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your work on this and your continued work on it, and I look forward to getting further updates about it as we move forward. Okay?
I'll start that call with Kimberly Adams tomorrow.
Okay,
Pre-development meetings.
The next one is about the Alameda bond project.
We know it's getting late and everybody's probably got better things to do than listen to us talk all night.
They're
We
going
have
to
pre-development
pre-development.
meetings, that's where we're headed.
Just a quick note, everybody saw the silver box. That's your air filtration underway as part of the campus remodel. It's almost silent. It's really hard to tell that it's working, but while we're here, it's working. And that was all part of our investment in a cleaner environment during the pandemic. So we'll benefit from that for years to come.
Okay.
What you got on Alameda?
Those, you two are both going? Okay.
We have
You're staying?
different
Yes.
ones, sorry.
Okay, so the last item on the agenda is the update on the Alameda widening bond project, which is from the 2012 proposal, one of the 2 remaining projects left. And it's ongoing right now. And I know I've seen some questions about it, and had some questions of my own that I wanted to clarify about it as well. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to
Sure.
talk about it, and get an update. let everybody know too, this project's not associated with the turnpike at all. This project is long before any of us knew about that, that's for sure.
Yes.
And it stops long before the proposed alignment as well, so. Please take it forward.
As you stated, this is part of the 2012 Transportation Bond Program. That was voted on like right after I got here to the city. This is the map for that program. As you can see, a little bit smaller program, really more outside, those outside travel routes. And Alameda Street was kind of an odd late addition to this one that we thought a roadway that we could add to it because we had a little more capacity there and added to it for this bond program. So this is the old tally sheet here, the old budgeting sheet that we had that we presented to the voters. You can see there, Alameda Street's the bottom project. Kind of the key here is you can see that without federal funding, it was a $4.9 million project. With federal funding, the city share would have been 1.3. So $1.3 million is the budget for this project because it's never going to get federal funding. This is a project that fell out. I do want to point out just from this that the only other project that's not complete at this time is the 36th Avenue Northwest from Tecumseh to Indian Hills. That project, as you can see, is a very large project. It's actually been broken into two pieces. It's not ranking well. We keep applying for other federal programs outside of the ACOG funding to try to get funded for that project.
We spoke directly to Senators Inhofe and Lankford and Tom Cole and Stephanie Bice specifically about this project and how we needed, back in April, about how we needed direct, not through ACOG, but we needed direct federal funding for this project, like straight to the city of Norman, because it was never going to get to us if it went through any other entity.
And we did have some, I believe we worked with Congressman Cole's office. I have to go back and look at my notes. And what happened is I said, here's the project. And they said, oh yeah, no, we don't have that much money. We have this much money. I said, okay, then we can do phase one. And they went, oh yeah, we don't have that much money. And it wound up being that they said, you can apply for an EDA grant. We think you might be possible for that. And that's a $1.5 million. And I went, that doesn't even get me started.
Yeah.
And so we kind of had to fall out from that.
Well, we know Lankford doesn't do earmarks, I guess. He doesn't believe in it. But none of the other members of Congress from Oklahoma feel that way, apparently. And so we were trying to say, hey, specifically for us, we need this much. It's voter approved. It connects Norman and Moore. It's one street over from I-35. So we really tried to make that pitch to them.
And we did apply for
unique
this.
situation.
We applied for the second year for a raise grant for that project. And this year we actually did it in conjunction with Moore to go all the way up to 34th Street. So that would 4-lane the entire section. And we're waiting official results on it to find out if we got that one or not.
So 3 miles.
It'd be 3 miles. And their section is about that big, and we're saying, hey, we just kind of want you to go in with us to see if this gets us over the top. So we're waiting for the official results on that. And they're any day now. So Alameda Street was supposed to be a 2015. Lindsay Street got split into two pieces to be able to fully fund it because they changed the maximum funding amount. Then we split 24th Avenue into two pieces because it exceeded the maximum funding amount. And then 36 got split. It's been a really hard, since 2012, there's been a lot of changes with the funding.
Yeah.
But just to show you where that falls, where we want it to fall. And I'm going to let Tim talk about the specific site conditions out there and where we're at with the current construction.
Thanks, Scott. So this is the location map, basically, and it's one project from basically Ridge Lake Boulevard on the west, clear east of 48th Avenue East. But we have it kind of broken out into two projects, an urban and a rural, because the roadway section changes, and we were doing some creative things with the bidding to keep the costs down. And I'll go into that into more detail as we move on through the presentation. So the urban section, what's being constructed out there today is a 3-lane roadway, which is 1 lane in each direction, a center turn lane for the continuous length of the project, curb and gutters on both sides, and then we put sidewalk on the south side, which is the developed side of the roadway that back when that was developed, it wasn't a requirement, so we're adding it as a part of this project. And so that portion of the project, it was just a little over $2.1 million. As Scott mentioned, we had a budget of 1.3, and we'll show how we came up with all that money.
That section is between Ridge Lake,
Ridge Lake and 36th.
36th.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have said that.
So Alameda between 24th and 36th goes from 5 lanes down to 3.
Yes.
Okay. And then it goes, well, I guess you'll get there, but
Yeah, and there's a possibility for a road diet even that section too, but that's not part of this
We go into that. We have some information
specific
on that.
project.
okay.
So the rural section then is showing a center turn lane on this typical section, and that really only applies at 36th Avenue and 48th Avenue, where we've added turn lanes at the intersections, so there's not traffic slow down at those areas. The rest of it is a 2-lane roadway, and what the big change is now is we have a 10-foot paved shoulder on both sides instead of grass that was kind of a drop-off area straight into the ditches. So now it's much safer. It's got the good buffer on both sides, and then the ditches or the forest slope stays in within right of way on both sides. Oh, I guess I missed the cost part. And so the bid for Silver Star is $1.5 million. And the reason that's so much less is because the streets department is actually going to do the paving on this project. And this is something we came to council with to talk about. And just to save funds, we're gonna go that route. And I'll talk about that more when we get to the estimate. But that's why it's so much cheaper than the previous project. So as Scott mentioned before, we had about a 1.3 million to begin with. And the original project was a 4.9 million project. And we basically took about a little over $900,000 out of the project through design features. But we were able to fund the project, one, through the excess surplus funds from the street maintenance bond from the 2016 to 2021 maintenance bond, and that was approved by council in January of this year. There was a small amount added to the 2021 street maintenance bond that runs through 2026, the 216,000, and that gives us the 3.9 million that we basically need to construct the project. And the 2021 maintenance bond funds was voter approved during that street bond. So the way we've saved money is through several different things. One, as I mentioned, the city crews are doing the paving there, which it wasn't saving half of the total paving cost, but it was, maybe a 30% savings or something, which was significant on that project. We didn't put the sidewalk on the north side in the urban project because that's currently undeveloped and will be required by the developer when that was done. We went with the 3-lane section. We evaluated several others that I'll get into more detail later, but the 3-lane roadway was saved funds, and then we didn't need any right-of-way with this, right-of-way was never budgeted, but with the 5-lane section that has been discussed at a few times, basically was going to take us outside the right-of-way plus have a lot of additional paving costs. And we were able to also reduce, by changing some of the storm sewer around, we minimized the amount of water line that we had to relocate, which was a fairly significant amount on this project. And so all that saved us that $972,000 that we needed to do it with these funds. So the current construction schedule, basically they're working on the urban section 100% right now. And the roadway is closed down between Ridge Lake and 36th Avenue today, not the intersection, but the main line section between those two. And that's supposed to be completed in October of this year. As they're nearing completion on that, so when that gets opened up, it's not a huge benefit because there's no really access on there at this point. But so as they're getting near to finishing that project, they're going to start on the intersection. And that way, they'll both be paved probably at the same time and completed quickly at the same time. So the intersection will be closed just a little bit over a month, probably from early October to towards the end of November or something like that. So they have worked ahead some in the rural portion of the project where they've put in new driveway pipes, and I have some photos of that coming up. Things that they could do without closing the road so that when they do close it for some intermediate phases, it'll go faster.
Councilor Stubben?
On that note part, the underground AT&T utility continue to cause delays. What is it,
So-
there are already underground utilities there that you're finding that's slowing you up?
There was a
or-
duct bank that AT&T had forgotten about. They have fiber that's direct barrier and conduit. And then the first day we started the water line project, there's this duct bank. And
Okay.
so that slowed the installation of the water line because we had to stay close to that to keep it out of the new inlets. But it was going to be a huge delay if we didn't work around it. So the contractor has done that. And then in the rural part, they're just behind on relocations because of materials. So we had them do all they could in the urban part, but the rural part still has to be done, and we're trying to get them done by the end of the year there so that there won't be these delays when we get to the rural part of the project. It's mainly, so the drive pipes are all in and they've all worked around that, but the new ditches, the changes of the location of the ditches is going to get into some of their underground if we don't have them relocate. So this is fairly current photos of both the urban and the rural project, but basically they've gone out there. It looks a lot different already if you haven't been out there compared. It looks more like an urban type roadway instead of the open ditches and everything that were there before. But and even from what you see there on the left side, all those manholes, the concrete round things with holes in them, and the pipes that are on the right side, those have all been put in the ground this week. So the underground part is almost done. It'll be done next week. So then really all they're going to be focusing on is like the subgrade stabilization and the paving and the curb and gutter after that, or curb and gutter before the paving. But so it should come together fairly quickly in the next month and a half or so. The right side, it just shows the dry pipes that have been installed. They have special safety in sections that those are poured in concrete. And so all but 2 of those are complete now, and those are waiting on AT&T to relocate. And so we're hoping to have them relocated when this storm sewer finishes up next week. So on the urban part, so they can finish that, and then they'll be done with their part of the project because they're a subcontractor to Silver Star. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about, did we construct the right roadway section in the urban part? And that's what I'm going to focus on here for a few minutes now. And basically, none of the bond language or the ballot, any of that stuff discussed how many lanes we were going to add in that area. I think staff left it that way so that we could evaluate the traffic and make a final determination. It is consistent with the 2014 Norman Comprehensive Transportation Plan. If you read through that page by page, there's places where they talk about a 5-lane section, but there's also places where they talk about it appears to be a candidate for a road diet. It just needs to be analyzed and add bike lanes instead of all the extra lanes that may not be needed. So we did evaluate 4-lane, 5-lane, but the problem is we were so constrained with cost that it really didn't make sense to put in extra lanes that weren't warranted by the traffic. We're going to have to buy additional right-of-way in the urban part to make that happen. And since we didn't get the federal funds, it was just real critical. We constructed what was needed, but not over-designed, basically, over-construct.
So on that one, the questions I had about it was that the flyer mailer that I have from 2012 does say Alameda Street widens road to 4 lanes to 36th Avenue East, adds 10-foot shoulders to 48th Avenue East.
Okay?
I couldn't find that flyer.
Yeah.
I did look for
So
things.
it's the
I'm-
front.
I'm-
I sent it to
I'm
Brenda.
not questioning you. I'm
No,
sure
no,
that
no.
you.
Yeah, I sent it to
But-
Brenda, but that's the front page of it, and then the second page was the map of it.
Yeah.
So I guess that was the front and that was the back. And so that was my concern because I saw someone mention, or someone on the Ward 5 page was critical about the 3-lane section. And I started thinking, I was like, yeah, well, I thought it was supposed to be 4. I personally am not opposed to the 3-lane. I'm all for road diets and 4-lane streets, that's just another lane people have to walk across to get across there. So I'm for that, but I did want to make sure that we were not getting ourselves in a situation. Also because if I recall, like on Jenkins, some of the residents have said, why can't it be 3 lanes? And our response has kind of been, well, we said it would be 4 lanes when we sent it out.
We'll try to get into that
So I wanted to
just a little bit more.
make sure we're
Yeah.
not finding ourselves in a.
All that, the bond language and all that, that kind of predates me at the city. And so I was relying on Sean and Scott and they were providing me like the presentation material that they had. And I got this directly from Sean, which was a slide that was basically promoting the bond. And, it never said anywhere where there was any specific lanes. They were talking about widening it, stormwater improvements, paved shoulders, intersection improvements. But I never found, from what I've dug through, and I haven't found that, it was just this type of information that was very
I think I
generic.
do know the flyer. I think I know what you're talking about now. I'd have to dig that back out.
Yeah.
But the actual ballot ordinance itself, it only mentions the project and the project limits with the amount.
And I
It
remember
doesn't-
too because in the early stages of Lindsay Street, we talked about maybe not doing it 4 lanes. We talked about if we could do roundabouts instead of traffic signals, maybe it wouldn't have to be 4 lanes, and it could, all those discussions. We had people like Commissioner Harrelson threaten to sue us if we did that because, it says it has to be. Some people even said it can't put the median in because it didn't say that. It didn't say median. It's got to be 5 flat.
Well, we do try to be very
We came to a
mindful
compromise and it worked out, but
of billing it per.
I remember that
language.
people
So,
saying, no, it's got to be
Yeah.
the way I read it.
But the ballot definitely doesn't talk about it and some of the other information we found, so. But it was looked at. I mean, it was analyzed and yeah, this is straight from the 2014 Comprehensive Transportation Plan where it says this is a potential various streets for road diets, and it mentions Alameda, basically all the way from. Classen,
Hey,
yeah.
I'm for that.
Yeah.
For that. That's a really wide right of way. 5 lane, it's almost like 6 really. It's so wide.
But one
And
thing
that'll
that
be tough
kills 3-lane progress and getting traffic through is right turn lanes, because people have to slow down to make the right turn lane. So here, on the south side of the road, Summit Lakes is fully developed. There are 0 turns on that side. The north side will get developed. I'm not sure how many access points it will be, but it will be controlled through planning. And so, I'm 1 or 2 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll work with the property.
So with the
as
center
what
turn
time it
lane,
is.
people that are going eastbound basically will not impede traffic at all. They'll just get in the turn lane, make it. And then westbound, and just how many access points there are, which will be limited off of Alameda since it's a major
There
section.
will
9
be a
type of-
right turn lane at 36
There-
right there to go south? Or
There's
no?
not a right turn lane.
There's not a right turn lane, just there aren't any right turns
Okay.
until the intersection.
We
I
did we
guess.
have one at 48th in the end?
I'd have to look at the plans again, because that may have a right turn lane.
I think that we did at least discuss it to get to the school, to get to Washington School. So I can't remember exactly, I can't remember if we wound up putting it in or by the time that we got our traffic out there, even with projections, the numbers dropped so far that we didn't need to. I
Well,
can't
it's
remember.
not like it's through. Everybody has to stop at that stop sign.
No, there's not a
There's
stop
not a
sign.
stop
It's not
sign.
a-
Is it going to continue to go straight through?
Yes.
Okay.
But we will be doing improvements at that intersection, and then we will be having left turn lanes. So at least there's gonna be some space in there.
Okay.
So this is what's a lot different than a Jenkins or a Porter, just very few, if any, right turn lanes. And that's what allows the traffic to flow well, even at higher traffic count volumes, basically. So it's hard to compare, even parts of town.
Yeah, sure.
And another item that I have to point out here is that in 2011, 2012, when we were putting this bond program together, we had our typical sections for roadways set out for us, and there was not a 3-lane opportunity for an arterial.
Before
So-
our trans.
So it wasn't
transportation
even,
plan, too.
it wasn't even a possibility for,
Right.
for consideration, if you really put it that way. And then with our comprehensive transportation plan, I'm going to say that right on the first time before I get out of here. That gave us this opportunity for roadways with lower traffic counts. So that was a new tool that we were given that we could utilize on this program, on this project.
Okay.
Kind of like the back end parking is.
Yeah,
you know,
we keep evolving.
And 48th, or Main Street between 36th and 48th on the west side, and then 48th between Main and Robinson, both road, well, and Rock Creek between
Yeah.
36th and
Yeah.
48th.
So we've got.
Three road diets, formerly 4-lane streets that are now 3 lanes with bike lanes on the sides.
So that's kind of all we have, just, you know, if there's more questions or discussion.
Well, like I said, really just kind of wanted to update for anybody out there that was curious about this project. We've seen, like I said, a lot of questions about it and references to it in regard to the turnpike stuff. And I've always been letting people know this has nothing to do with that at all. But also the 3-lane versus 4-lane and whatever was written where, and if it's the same standard we're applying to other projects, or if we're telling other folks that it has to be 4 lanes because that's what it said, or is this one, you know, just wanting to clarify. I appreciate.
Well, typically, we're basing it more, I mean, it is what it says, but I mean, like, for example, in the information we've sent on some other projects, we're very specific on the lanes, but it comes down more to those traffic factors, the vehicles per day, the peak vehicles per day, the number of turns, the speed, how many stop conditions are there, and it's all those things, and it's not A, B, or C, it may be A and D, and then C gets close. So it's each independent, and it can change block by block, but we're obviously not going to go 3-lane, 4-lane through a corridor. But, you know, you've got to look at the overall flow of a section of a roadway and how it's going to function best for the users. And we do take that in mind, and we do kind of weigh all those on projects to see what's the best for the community.
Jenkins is tough because it's almost like a special event street. It's, you know, the residents feel like day to day, there's not a lot of traffic to justify what the project we're doing. But there are times a year when it's a lot of traffic on that street, and it's only probably going to get more and more as OU has developed along it.
And Reeves Park.
And Reeves Park,
We're really
yes,
thinking that
yes.
as Reeves Park becomes more used and you're not splitting that youth baseball and softball between Griffin and Reeves, now it's all going to be at
Right.
Griffin, you're going to see an increase in traffic just due to that. And if that does become a tournament location, which everybody's thinking it will, you're going to see a huge increase in traffic. And we want to be prepared for that. We'd hate to come back and go, wow, we totally missed it.
Councilman Grant?
Any of our east side tip stuff kind of like also factor into the traffic? Like if we actually do something like that?
If an east side TIF was done and significant development would occur, I would assume so, yeah, absolutely. That,
Include public improvements like
yeah,
road improvements in a TIF.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if we get to that point, just different opportunities.
You know, and as developments come online,
Right?
you know, if like the Destin Landing area, that's, you know, down south of Cedar Lane and 36 in that area, as they come online, they will be either, Cedar Lane's already up to be widened, but undeveloped property as it comes online, so as they final plat it, they either have to do half roadway widening, or what we prefer them to do is pay a deferral if we know there's a project coming, and then we take their money and put it with our money and build the road at one time because it's a better roadway. It doesn't work when you start
Yeah.
doing little chunks. We tried to do that on Porter, and it was a nightmare. We prefer just to fix it and do it once and do it right. So, you know, the developers do, as they come in, pay their share for those areas that abut undeveloped properties.
okay. Any other questions, comments from you guys? You all? Okay. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your work and update on that project. Looking forward to getting it done, and then just have the one left. You know, say once again that we are, based on all of our updates, we're ready to go with the 36 project. It's It's the federal funding. We can't just come up with $11 million more or whatever it is out of nowhere for that, for a single road project. And so, we've heard a lot of criticism out there about the city being the fault for that, but we're not at fault for that. If you go back and look at all the meetings, and we've talked about it so many times, but I always feel like we have to just keep putting it out there that we're ready to go on that project on
And
our end.
we've been applying for the federal funds through ACOG since 2016.
Yes.
So it's not like we haven't been trying to go get it.
Yeah, okay. Well, if that's it, thank you all very much. This
Thank
meeting
you.
is adjourned.